goes to right. Russell Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Deibs, Mr. Crackpot on Twitter. Welcome to the Party on Broad. Today is our volume 2 of our Eagles draft preview. Today we are ranking our top day 2 prospects for the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we get started, though, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on Twitter at The Painted Lines. Turn on those notifications here on YouTube. Today, joining us is my man Shane. You know him on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. What's going on, Shane?
Not much. Just living my best life in draft season. You know, the best time to be an Eagles fan is like between the end of the year, end of the last game, and then the start of the actual draft, because it goes to crap once the draft starts. But, man, draft season's fun.
Love it, love it, love it. Also joining us today is my man, Chris Malley. You know him as a journalist at 4th and John, one of the best Eagles followers, period, at Malley_Chris_24. What's going on, Chris?
Not so much, guys. How you guys doing tonight? Just ready for this Carson Wentz drama to be over. I'm trying to focus on the draft as much as I can. I mean, like we even talked about like the prospects of drafting a quarterback, but today we're going to be focusing on day 2 guys, which was a ton of guys that we mentioned in the last episode and guys from the Senior Bowl, and it's really exciting. I mean, like first round picks, like they're like they get all the glamour, but like the second round and third round guys are the guys who really pop off. I mean, just look at this Super Bowl teams and all like the second and later round picks that really stepped up. So it's going to be a great show.
Yes, sir. A lot of really strong talent here in that second and third round. We got Kevo saying Asante Samuel Jr., bro. Kevin's asking, yo, did we get David Montgomery? Probably the funniest moment of today's drama. Absolutely hilarious, saying he's gone. Nope. I kid. And he thinks Carson might just end up staying. Let's get this show on the road. We're going to start with our number 5 best fit on day 2. Shane, lead us off, man. Who is your number 5?
All right, so I kind of went a little bit of a different route with this. I mean, I didn't want to pick like 5 guys, you know, my top 5 guys that I think will go at the start of the second round. I kind of wanted to spread it out. So I took a guy from each of the Power 5 conferences to talk about, and all different positions too. So we're kind of scattershotting everywhere. But my number 5 was wide receiver Nico Collins from Michigan. I think for him, you know, he's got a great catch radius. I mean, he's 6'4", so the guy's real big, especially when you look at, you know, the Eagles having Jalen Reagor, who's, you know, he's sub 6 foot and he's more of a yak guy. And, you know, they've always liked that Alshon Jeffrey mold receiver. And you've probably got Alshon gone next year. You've probably got Ertz gone next year. So this dude's huge, 6'4", great hands, good ability to win at the catch point. I mean, he had like just under 20 yards per reception in 2019. So, you know, he's a big play threat down the field. He's got a great release. You know, he's not going to get bodied by corners. You know, some of the flip sides that he doesn't have much yak ability. He's got a real limited route tree. He pretty much ran hitches or 9 routes in college. But I think he could be a good fit for the Eagles, maybe as an X receiver, looking at somewhere in the third, you know, mid to late third round, and a long-term replacement for Alshon. So that was my number 5 guy, Nico Collins out of Michigan.
All right, number 5 is off the board for Shane. Chris, who's your number 5?
Yeah, Shane, I love Nico Collins at the Senior Bowl and before. I mean, him and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had a great year at the back end for Cleveland, they just got so screwed because the quarterback play with Shea Patterson. But both guys are just like physically dominant. Nico Collins had an excellent week. My 5 in general, I like Shane. I tried to mix it up as much as I could with between guys that would go in the second and third round. My first guy for number 5 was DJ Daniel from Georgia. He was projected by Matt Miller to go around like top 50 pick preseason. And then he got injured in July, and then he was banged up all year for Georgia, and he didn't play as much. And when he did play, he was really good, but he didn't play as much because Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell were back for Georgia. But then he got ready for the Senior Bowl, and he was phenomenal. He got voted the best defensive back on the American team. He was just dominant. Kadarius Toney, he was making people want to go home early all week. He stuck him every single route. You have scouts all over the place saying he's exactly what you want in today's NFL, and he really would fit the mold of what our defensive coordinator for the Eagles, Gannon, really likes. He's a lanky corner. He's 6'1", like 205 pounds. He's gonna run a 4.4. And the thing with him is he's really aggressive with man coverage, but he's also good in zone. And the most impressive thing I saw from him was he absolutely shut down Ja'Marr Chase when he played LSU, and he had him really frustrated. Ja'Marr Chase only ended up, I think it was 3 catches for like 40 yards, and this is the guy that was averaging a touchdown every 4.4 catches. He held him to 3 catches, and the one catch was like, they pretty much made sure that Chase got open on like an inside route. But DJ Daniel, he's a huge value add. He might even slip into the 4th round, but I think after the Senior Bowl performance, he'll probably be a 2nd round pick. I mean, like a 3rd round pick. Really good kid.
Kevo says, I don't have us drafting any wide receivers in this draft earlier than the 4th because we took 3 last year. I actually don't have any wide receivers on my day 2 radar, but obviously it's Ja'Marr Chase and Devontae Smith in the 1st. If they're not available, I am pro trade down for the Philadelphia Eagles, but we touched on that during our previous pod. Go check out our volume 1 that was about like a few days ago. Strongly recommend it. Let's go on to my number 5. Give me a second while I share my screen here. Chris. All right. So my number 5 is Landon Dickerson, center prospect from Alabama. This is the only the other 4, I promise you, are either defensive backs or linebackers. I think that is the strength of this day 2 area here and biggest need for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Landon Dickerson, 6'6", 326 pounds. He played every position on the line. He's super versatile, which is incredibly important for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was named first team SEC, first team All-American, SEC's Jacobs Blocking Trophy. So this guy started every game the last 2 years after transferring from Florida State. However, this guy does have one major red flag, and that is he is injury prone. This guy suffered an ACL tear in that SEC championship game against Florida. In the last 5 college football seasons, he suffered 4 season-ending injuries. Tore his ACL in 2016, missed 9 games in 2017, forced a redshirt in 2018. But you look at who this guy is; he's a leader. This guy is a ridiculous competitor. He knows you, and who knows what you got with Jason Kelce possibly retiring this offseason. Do the Eagles even look to trade him? He's a dead cap of $10+ million if he's traded before June 1st. So he could probably cost you more if you actually trade him than cut him. So all signs probably point to Kelce returning next year. But this is a position that has to be addressed. At the end of the day, whether Carson's here or not, it's about protecting the quarterback. I've got Landon Dickerson here at number 5. Would be an awesome value pick in that round 3 area. Any comments on that, Chris?
Yeah, I like Dickerson. I know that changed really high on Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma. He's a fan of Oklahoma, so he saw a lot of tape. He's not as mobile as him, and the upside's not exactly the same, but he's pretty much as steady as they come. There's actually a ton of interior linemen. Like, that's the thing where I'm not really super interested in any lineman in the first round, minus Sewell if they end up getting him super early, because you have guys like Trey Smith, who I left out of the top 5, but he's like a steal from Tennessee. There's a ton of linemen. I mean, even Tommy Kramer from Notre Dame is an absolute steal later in the draft. There's guys all over the place, but I really do like your selection. But there really is a lot of guys with linebackers, linemen. This really is a perfect draft for the Eagles. They just have to hit on the picks because the guys are there.
Yeah. All right, Shane. Go ahead, Shane.
While we're on offensive linemen, Chris, what's your thoughts on Rashawn Slater? I've heard a lot of buzz Slater on him moving up. I've heard people putting him above Sewell, which I think is a little crazy, but I mean, I think he's talented. Where do you have him falling on a big board for you?
Dude, I was just talking to some of my colleagues about this throughout the last 2 weeks, because Daniel Jeremiah was saying that Slater might go ahead of Sewell, which is kind of mind blowing. The thing with Slater is he can move. He's a little more versatile than Sewell. That being said, he's not really excellent at anything. So it's kind of like Sewell's the master of 2 things, and then Slater's kind of okay at like 5 things. He's good. I really like Darrisaw too, and obviously you have all the guys from Bama, but it's a tough call. I mean, people really like Slater for some reason. I like we were talking about at the beginning of the last episode, this is going to be the most bizarre draft where guys are going to have to take risk and go with their gut feelings because there's no combine, and the Senior Bowl was the last time to really see a lot of live footage. And add on to it, Swell didn't even play in the 2020 season. Neither did a lot of the top prospects like Jamar Chase. So these guys really have to rely on the info that they got from last year and then the small info that they're getting this year. But yeah, Slater I like. He's a riser. Some people are saying he might go in the top 10. That would honestly be the best case scenario for the Eagles, as many linemen and quarterbacks going before them.
Awesome. Shane, why don't you lead us off with your number 4 best fit in day 2?
Well, while we're on offensive linemen, we already mentioned him, but my number 4 was interior offensive lineman Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma. Again, I'm an Oklahoma fan, so I've seen every game he's played. But, he came into Oklahoma, which traditionally has really good linemen. They've got a lot of linemen in the NFL, and he started as a true freshman at center, and he lost both of his guards and tackles after his freshman year. And so he's, in a situation where everything else is new in his sophomore season, and he really took a step forward in terms of leadership. He's really a technician at the position, got a really good football IQ. He's not an elite athlete in the mold of Jason Kelce. But Oklahoma pulled him. I don't know that you're going to want to pull him a ton or get him out of the screen game a lot. He's better in like those tight spaces. He's left-handed too, which is kind of strange for a center. It would take a little bit of an adjustment for a quarterback maybe, but overall I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think he could be a good fit, whether it be to take him now and Kelce comes back and he steps in the next year as a Kelce replacement, or maybe Kelce retires now. I don't know. I know that the Eagles took Isaac Seumalo several years ago with the idea he would eventually move to center. When they tried him there in training camp a couple years ago, it was kind of a disaster. So I don't know if that's still the plan. If you do want him to be the center, I think Humphrey could play guard. He didn't in college, but I think his skill set works there well. So just kind of another versatile piece on the interior O-line for Stoutland to work with.
Kevo says, Isaac or Herbig, we need an alternate. But he thinks the young linemen we already have are promising enough to move forward. Any thoughts on that, Chris? Do you think the Eagles should address the O-line? Where does that rank for Eagles' positions of need in this draft?
I think it's crucial that they add at some point. That being said, I really do think that unless we end up trading some people, we really can't expect that we're going to have that many injuries. It's tough, man. You want to prepare for the worst, and the worst keeps on happening to us. But at the same time, it's like we lost like 7 linemen throughout the season, and we had, I think it was 13 different rotations. It's the most in NFL history, I believe, or like the most in like a really long time. And I look at the positives from it. We got to see a lot of these guys get meaningful snaps, like Herbig and Driscoll were phenomenal. Mailata was amazing. And Lane Johnson thinks Mailata is just scratching the surface of how good he's going to be. And then we're going to see what Dillard's made of. I do think that you need to add just for the sake of adding, to be honest, because we really need to have depth on top of it. This is a really great offensive line draft. So I'd like to have 1, maybe 2 people. Like Humphrey would be great. Tommy Kramer, and the whole thing is they need to figure out who the heir apparent's going to be for Kelce. Maybe it's someone on the team already. That being said, like you need to be certain, because you see how big it is when a snap, like Kelce, he had a bunch of bad snaps this year, and he's arguably still the best center in the league. So you don't want to have some guy that's going to have nerves. And even Lane Johnson, he was really off his rookie year. Like you got to get these guys as much exposure, and you got to make sure that you have a strong backup. So you're going to have Carson or Jalen, and you saw running for their lives, like you saw Mahomes running for his life just on Sunday.
Yeah. All right, Chris, what's your number 4? Oh, go ahead, Shane.
I was going to say, if you kind of think about the Eagles' offensive line, you've got, we've got the Mailata Dillard thing at left tackle. You feel pretty good that one of those guys is going to be able to do that. You've got Seumalo at left guard, Kelce at center, Brooks at right guard, and you've kind of got Herbig as a backup there. And then we have, Lane. Lane and Driscoll at right tackle. Driscoll showed he could kick into guard if he needed to, but the big place we are missing is somebody to replace Jason Kelce. If Kelce goes down, who steps in there?
Yep.
I mean, Sayamalo, he didn't do well in training camp a couple years ago, and we tried it. If he goes there, who do you put at left tackle? Because Herbig was much better at right guard than left guard. So, if Sewell's there, I'd take him because you don't get a shot at a tackle like that very often. But the place I'm really worried about is somebody that could step in and play center. That's really it for me.
Mm.
Kev says, who wears a Mario Kart shirt? Nerd. I love Mario Kart, man. I love it to death. All right, let's roll on to your number 4, Chris. Who's your number 4?
Javonte Williams from North Carolina. I mean, dude, this kid's amazing. He wasn't on as many people's radars, but him and Michael Carter from UNC, they're both phenomenal all year. Javonte Williams, he's kind of like my A.J. Dillon this year. He's like the guy that he's like the bigger back that would be amazing to complement Miles Sanders. 5'10", 220, 1,400 yards this year, 222 all-purpose touchdowns. I mean, he's a monster. He's the type of guy that would really complement Miles perfectly, or he could just be the lead back on any team. North Carolina, they took a really big step up the last couple of years, and this year it really was attributed to Michael Carter and Javonte Williams just being sensational. Brute strength. I think he even could slide into the first, but I feel like the NFL and the owners are really trying to push running backs to go into the second round for value and cost wise, because Najee Harris any other year would probably be regarded as like a top 15 pick, but some people aren't even expecting him to go in the top 25 because Najee Harris could possibly be like a top 5 running back in the league next year, depending on his fit.
All right, Javonte Williams. Let me remove this here 1 second. Let's go to my number 5. My number 5, you already talked about Georgia, Chris, but I'm going to the other side. I'm going Tyson Campbell, cornerback from Georgia. My goodness, this is hard to do when you're doing like multiple things at once. All right, hold on. Chris. There we go. Now we're talking. There he is. Tyson Campbell, 6'2" cornerback prospect from Georgia, would be an excellent pick there in that second, third round range. He played really well last season in 2020. He's a big corner, someone who is tough. He's got a lot of size, a lot of good cover skills. He's a guy that fits that Jonathan Gannon profile. He's tall, he's physical. That the idea of having Campbell and Slay playing a press man scheme on the outside next year would be very, very could be special. Have some sort of potential there. So super talented prospect. He was ranked the number 2 cornerback coming out of high school. He was actually teammates with Patrick Surtain back in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So this guy's a very good tackler, something that you normally don't find out of a cornerback prospect. He's also got some versatility because he played safety in high school. He played both man and zone coverage for Georgia. So I think that like the Eagles love, I don't know what we're going to expect between Schwartz and Gannon, but the Eagles notoriously love to have versatility in their defensive backfield. This guy brings it. What the question is, what is Jonathan Gannon going to do stepping in as defensive coordinator? I think it's likely we see, Shane and I were talking about this, you see Jalen Mills come back on like a short 1-year, $4 million deal on outside corner. Seems like a really good fit in that Gannon defense. So whether you love or hate Jalen Mills, I'm more of the latter, to be honest. But the Eagles must find a bona fide starting outside corner alongside Darius Slay, period. That is Tyson Campbell. I think it would be a really, really good fit there in that second round range. Any comments on that, Chris?
Yeah, I like Campbell a lot. I mean, you alluded to the connection with Surtain. I mean, Campbell was a 5-star out of high school. That was the crazy thing, that Campbell and Stokes have all of the notoriety, but then I really broke down the film with the 3 of them, and DJ Daniel really stuck out the most to me. And it was funny because I tried to watch the All-22 where like I wasn't really looking at the numbers, and I just watched the tape through like without looking at who was playing, and I replayed it and then looked at the numbers. And I like Campbell a lot. I think that like he's more physically gifted than either of the two, but there's times where he plays like really sloppy, and usually his athleticism makes up for the mistakes. I mean, he's a guy that like he plays like 100 miles per hour all the time, and sometimes it gets you burnt. That's not a bad thing though. That's something that just needs to really be refined. And I think with the right coaching, that Campbell can definitely be an everyday starter in the NFL. But there's a reason why he's being talked about in like the second round instead of the first. But Campbell's like a 5-star and like a really great pedigree, just like Stokes and DJ. So I think the Georgia cornerbacks are really solid in like the second and third rounds.
Awesome. Let's keep it rolling. Shane, who is your number 3?
My number 3 going to the SEC, I've got linebacker Dillon Moses from Alabama. I mean, everybody knows the Eagles need linebacker help. And, watching him, he's a guy that I really like. He's a great tackler, real physical, likes to play downhill, and he likes to hit people. While he was at Alabama, he played in all 3 linebacker spots, so he's got really good instincts kind of across the board, whatever situation he finds himself in. One of the big knocks on him, though, is because he's so aggressive, he likes to go out and hit people. He tends to overreact to play action and to misdirection. So, I mean, he'd fit right in with the Eagles linebackers, right? Because we all do that. But he'd fit in there, and then he struggles a little bit at, getting off of blocks, especially in the middle. So I don't know that you would want him to be a middle linebacker for you, but you could put him on the strong side. He's good enough in coverage. You could put him on the weak side. I think you would want to keep him out of the middle. But he's got the potential to be 3-down linebacker in the NFL, I think. And, I mean, he's an immediate upgrade on anyone that the Eagles have. So, Dillon Moses, Alabama.
Dillon Moses. Any thoughts on that, Chris? And what's your number 3, man?
So I like Moses. That being said, he's probably like linebacker 6 or 7 on my list, and that isn't a knock on him. It just shows you how deep the linebacker position is, and that's why I'm really not interested in taking one in the first, especially as high as 6. And because I think you can get the most bang for your buck in the second and third, far as linebackers. Moses I like a lot. I feel like he's had a little trouble recovering from injuries that he's had, but he's still going to be a really solid linebacker in the NFL if he can stay healthy. My number 3 is a guy on the opposite side of that picture, and it was Jabril Cox from LSU. He's one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft. I mean, Jabril Cox was the best linebacker at the Senior Bowl. It wasn't even close. He was going to probably be like an early 3rd-round pick. Now he's probably going to be like a late to mid 2nd-round pick. He's phenomenal in coverage. He started off at North Dakota State. Shout out to Carson Wentz. And then now he found himself at LSU, and he's amazing. I mean, when you watch Jabril Cox, he's just all over the field. And the big thing is you just saw how much linebacker play changes the game watching Tampa Bay. Devin White, LSU guy, and Lavonte David. I think that's probably the best linebacker tandem in the NFL. And they took care of everything. And you need guys like Jabril Cox and like the Devin Whites of the world, because when you're going against like a Tyreek Hill or you're going against Travis Kelce, the first mistake that Tampa Bay made the first time they versed Kansas City was they didn't play as back as they should have for Tyreek Hill. They just put Winfield and those guys as far back, and they said, you're not going deep on us, so you're going to have to work underneath. And Devin White and Lavonte David took care of everything. That would be Jabril Cox for us. He'd easily be our best linebacker. He can cover anyone, and he comes up in the run game. I think Jabril Cox would be a lights out pick and with our 2nd round or 3rd round pick, depending on how the board goes. But there's so many linebackers. And we're going to talk about honorable mentions after we finish our list, but he's definitely one of the best out of the group.
All right. Jabril Cox goes number 3 for Chris. Let me stop sharing this one. Let me move on to this one. My number 3, I'm going to stay in that defensive backfield. There it is. All right, let me share this. I'm going to stay in the defensive backfield and go for a safety from TCU, and that's Trayvon Mary. Jalen Mills is a free agent this year. Rodney McLeod, 2 injuries last 3 years. He'll be a free agent next year. You got Kayvon Wallace and Grayland Arnold. They both have potential. It's far from a guarantee, though. Those guys are a lock to start in the near future. Marcus Epps played 14 games. He started 5, 47 tackles, 2 picks. he showed some upside, but no way does that stop me from finding an upgrade here. Howie Roseman said it, last year, although he straight up lied, that they needed to add youth and speed. Well, Trayvon Mary's game is literally built on speed. So in his last 22 games, Trayvon Mary had 6 interceptions, 20 passes defended. He's got great size at 6'2", 202 pounds. He's not a good tackler like my other guy, but he's got good technique and he's not afraid to play physical. So he's going to need some coaching there, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. But most importantly, though, like, so many people rave about this guy's intangibles. This guy plays with an energy. He plays with a swagger that you want to see from a safety. And his football IQ and leadership is literally off the charts. He's a guy you want in that Eagles locker room. And he would be a no-brainer for me in that top of the second round. Trayvon Mary. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I mean, I feel like safety is kind of the position that people kind of forget that we really need. Because right now, like corner, at least we know Slay's there. The other corner, it's a glaring need because we saw, I'm not even remembering his name, the Cowboys game. We love like 175 yards. Michael Jacquet. That was like, it was mind blowing to watch that performance and just leaving him on an island. That being said, we do that a bunch of times. So that's like, as much as I like Jim Schwartz, when he did stuff like that, it blew your mind. Morg, he'd be phenomenal here because you don't really know what you have in Kayvon. Mills is a free agent. Epps is very lackluster. And then McLeod's coming off a major injury. So I think safety is like a huge need. Just like linebacker, there's a ton of safeties I like. Unfortunately, last year we missed out on Jeremy Chin because Howie got a little crazy. And Jeremy Chin was one of my favorite prospects ever. I'm actually going to talk about a safety for my next pick. But it's a shame. I mean, because Jeremy Chin, everyone was pounding the table for him, and everyone watched him at the Senior Bowl. And then I think Chin should have won Defensive Player of the Year over Chase Young. I don't even think it was close. I mean, Chin scored it was like 2 touchdowns in like 40 seconds. It was like week 10. He had like 2 fumble recoveries, back-to-back drives. I mean, he's amazing. It just shows you how much an impact playmaker can do. I mean, you saw Antoine Winfield absolutely light up the field this year as a rookie. So Morg would be really important, or anyone like that.
Awesome. Let's roll to Shane. What's your number 2?
And talking about safeties, I get gut punched by the Eagles every year. Like 3 years ago, I loved Justin Reed. Like, I was mocking him in the first round. I couldn't believe he fell to the third. And it turns out, I mean, I guess there were concussion issues that we didn't know about, and he's been great. The year after that, it was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that I wanted so bad. He fell all the way to like the 5th round. I couldn't believe it. We didn't. And last year, Chin. Like, I feel like every year I've been all in on a safety, and they've gone so much later than expected, and they've been studs, and it just kills me. And I'm going to talk about a safety in a minute, but before we get there, Chris already mentioned this guy, but my number 2 guy was running back Javonte Williams from UNC. And, you know, Chris did a great job talking about him. I just think he'd be a great complement to Miles Sanders. I mean, a lot of places he'd be a really good feature back, but he's got that big frame. He's kind of a power runner between the tackles, got really good vision and footwork. But the reason I really like him is because, surprisingly, for a kind of a power guy, he's a really good pass blocker, and he's pretty good receiver too, which is something we know that Nick Sirianni likes to do with his offense, and it's something that Miles Sanders really struggled with in 2020. So if you could get somebody to kind of check those boxes that Sanders doesn't in pass protection, as a pass catcher, and for short yardage, I think he'd be a great pick. He's a guy, like Chris said, that I think could go into the first round on talent, but I think it's pretty likely he's there mid-second round just because of the devaluing of that running back position.
Awesome. Chris, what's your number 2, man?
Yeah, and just with Javonte, I think it's funny because everyone talks about Miles being like the workhorse guy, and everyone's like, oh, like we need a Nyheim Hines. Like we already have like our Jonathan Taylor for Sirianni's system. It's like, what if Miles is supposed to be the Nyheim Hines and we need a guy like Williams to be the 3-down back and like Jonathan Taylor? Because I think Miles it was kind of weird because it was almost like a bipolar year for Miles, because Miles as a rookie was amazing in pass protection after the first couple weeks, and he was amazing as a pass catcher down the stretch. I mean, Miles in the screen game is how we won those 4 games in a row in the NFC East, and then last year it was like horrible. I think about like 70% of it was Wentz was just throwing terrible balls. That being said, like Miles was just flat out dropping the ball, and he couldn't block either. And if you can't protect the quarterback, it's really hard to keep you on the field, no matter how explosive you are. So that's why Javonte Williams is so high on our list, and he's just an incredible back. There's other guys too, like Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis that I like a lot, and there's a ton of running backs, but he's really high on the list. Number 2 for me, I just tried to think. No, go Shane.
No, but as I say, the thing too about Miles is, I mean, it's not uncommon for Miles to have like 8 carries for 12 yards and then rip off a 70-yarder. Like, you need a guy that's not so boom or bust that can consistently move the chains. Like the home run hitter is great, but you can't be running the ball for a yard a carry for 8 carries and then hit a big one. You need that consistency to move the sticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's why I was so high on adding Leonard Fournette when he got cut. That being said, it takes 2 sides to want to come here. I mean, he knew what he was doing when he went to Tampa. Number 2 for me, he's not necessarily like my top safety, but he's a guy that I think is going to rise, and he's going to have a Jeremy Chin-like track. It's Richie Grant from UCF. I mean, this guy was talked about a little bit. We interviewed him before the Senior Bowl, and he told us, like, I'm going to have a huge week. I mean, he did. I mean, everyone has been talking about him for the last 2 weeks since the Senior Bowl. He's an absolute ball hawk. It was kind of crazy how many times he was picking up people like Mac Jones at practice, and it just looked good. Like, it wasn't like bad throws. Like, people were throwing seeds in like right into the corner, and he was picking them off. He had a lot of pass breakups. I think that he might sneak into the second round now. People were getting really high on him. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Jeremy Chin, where like he just kept impressing rep after rep, and then people are like, okay, like this guy's going to probably become a second round pick now. And like we were talking about with Trayvon Mary, like those are guys that we need. I mean, you have Andre Cisco, you have Paris Ford. There's tons of safeties. There's tons of linebackers. That's why people really talk about taking Chase and Smith early, because there's no one like that after them. Like Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith are unicorns in the draft. And then later you're going to get wide receivers that absolutely could even have a better career than them. But the probability of Chase and Smith being great wide receivers is probably like 90%. And then the other guys, it's probably like 75%. But when it comes to the linebackers and the safeties, all the value picks are in the second and third rounds. And that's why you talk about not taking Parsons at 6. You talk about taking Jabril Cox, Cam McGrone, and those guys in the second and third.
Kevo says, I have us drafting first tight end, then cornerback, then wide receiver, linebacker, edge, and offensive line. And that's like something I've been just thinking about over and over and over again is the Eagles have so many holes to fill. They're so depleted in youth. They need to have just an influx of talent, and trading out of that number 6, trading back a little bit to like that 8 to 10 range would be so perfect for this team if they can get another asset and maybe someone falls. That's something I always think about, especially only if Chase and Devontae Smith are there, because those are my 2 guys. Let's roll on to my number 2, and Shane already nailed it. My number 2 is Dillon Moses, linebacker from Alabama. I mean, what else is there more to say about the Eagles linebacker position? Nate Gary, remember this mind-blowing stat when opposing quarterbacks targeted Nate Gary in the passing game last year? They completed 27 of 32 pass attempts for 257 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a quarterback rating of 139.7. Unbelievable. Davion Taylor is an interesting pick. Interesting prospect for the Eagles moving forward, but in no way does Davion Taylor stop me from addressing this position in the second round. Alex Singleton had one of those like rare bright spots for the Eagles last year. Again, doesn't stop me from moving forward. I'm talking about a potential second round pick here in Dillon Moses, legitimate linebacker that can really do damage, whether that's in the middle or on the outside. There was a time when Dillon Moses was actually considered a first round pick. But this is a guy that kind of missed all of 2019 due to a knee injury. But other than that, this guy kind of gives you everything you want. He's a great tackler. He plays with a lot of speed, strength, and physicality. I actually absolutely love this level of playmaker for the Eagles in that second round range. I would love to see this guy in Midnight Green. And I can't even imagine how like ecstatic Eagles fans would be if they brought in a linebacker from Alabama into that defense. So that would be absolutely terrific pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's roll on to Shane. What is your number one, man?
I'd be ecstatic if the Eagles just picked a linebacker that's played football before. I mean, took Davion Taylor, who barely played football. We took Nate Gary, who wasn't even a linebacker. Like, let's just draft a linebacker that played linebacker sometime. That'd be great. Number one, I'll go ahead.
Didn't Davion? Well, he didn't even play barely played linebacker in high school, correct?
Yeah, because religion.
I think he played like one season in high school and like 4 games or so. I don't remember. It was when he was drafted. I was like, you know what? He's the type of guy that's going to be great on his second contract with a different team once he's learned how to play football. But yeah. Anyways, my number one, going to the Pac-12 or Pac-10. I still call it the Pac-12. Pac-10. Safety from Oregon, Javon Holland. I mentioned earlier, I fall in love with safeties every year, and Holland's not the only one. I'll mention another one in my honorable mention, but I love Holland. Like, honestly, I think he could sneak into the back end of the first round, but I think he's likely there at the top of the second. He's just got everything you want. He's got a high football IQ. He dropped into the slot for Oregon, so when a team comes out in 11 personnel, they could stay in base coverages. They could put him in the slot, which I know Eagles fans like, we do not need another slot corner, but he gives you that versatility. He's got great range. I mean, from single high, he can track to the sideline to make plays. He's got good special teams ability, which is not what you draft a guy for in the second round, but it doesn't hurt that he's got that, because our special teams were god awful last year. And, I tried to list like some pros and cons for all my guys here, and I couldn't even come up with anything for him. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's an instant starter for the Eagles, regardless of what happens with Mills. I mean, Mills comes back fine. I mean, I think Holland beats him out. Or you got McLeod coming off an injury. Like, he's going to beat one of those two guys out. He can be your third safety. He can be a slot corner. He can be a deep safety. He can do whatever you want him to do. And I think I would be ecstatic if we walk out of the draft with Javon Holland.
All right. Javon Holland is Shane's number one day 2 prospect. Any thoughts on that, Chris? And what's your number one, dude?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Holland. I do think that he might sneak into the back of the first, or just like in middle to early second. There's, like we were talking about, the safety group. We just talked about like 6 of them. It's a really deep class at safety. It's a really deep class at linebacker. Moses, he kind of, for some reason, I have a weird feeling he's going to slide. It really depends how he looks at his pro day, because I feel like Jabril Cox is flying up the board, and I feel like Moses is kind of going the other way. I think Moses is going to have a solid NFL career, but I feel like he almost is going to be like, what is his name on Cleveland? You guys are going to remember. Mac. Mac was a guy that people were talking about in like the first round when he was like a freshman, in like the second round when he was like a junior, and then all of a sudden he went in like the 5th round. And I was kind of hoping the Eagles drafted him because I'm like, if you can get a linebacker from Bama that late, you kind of have to jump on it. My number one guy, I think he could go in the first round. Some people are mocking him in the first round. I think he sneaks into the second. It's Taurus Marshall from LSU. This guy is 6'3", 6'4", like 205. He's a monster. I mean, LSU, they know what they're doing with the receivers. Just look at the track record. This season against Missouri, he had a game with 11 catches, 235 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He kind of reminds me. I mean, you just keep seeing guys come out of LSU, and people are kind of like waiting for them to bust, but they're not. You see guys like DJ Chark on Jacksonville. He's kind of one of the larger receivers like Marshall, and he dominates. Marshall, in my opinion, is probably bigger and faster than him. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, they can't talk more highly about the guy. They love him. Taurus Marshall, I think he very well could be a first-round pick, but I think him and Bateman, they're kind of the value guys, because Bateman's probably going to go like middle to late in the first, and Marshall's probably going to go middle to late in the first. But those are two guys that could have like the better NFL careers, because they might end up on a team that they're not the one, and they can just like absolutely dominate. One quick comment. We're talking about the linebackers, and we're talking about Davion Taylor. I mean, come on, like we talked about this last year. Like Davion Taylor wasn't even on our boards until like the 5th, maybe 6th round. We do that constantly. We did that with Marcus Smith. We did that with JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, I was watching a draft, and I'm like looking at all these people on the draft boards. I mean, Solomon Kinley from Georgia, the guard. I was slamming the table to take him in the back of the 3rd round, but we ended up taking Taylor. That blew my mind. I mean, Josh Kelly was there. Harrison Bryant, the tight end, fell a lot. I'm pretty sure he won the award for best tight end in college football. Akeem Davis-Gaithers fell right to our lap. That's why it just made no sense, because I was like, Davion Taylor is like that random player you make on Madden who like works out because he's like really fast, and like you don't have to worry about him not being good like mentally at football. Like Davion Taylor has a lot of raw skills, but like we talked about, like his experience level is like 1.5 out of 10, and then he was just like really raw. That's why it's like crazy that like, not to knock on Singleton, but it's just like everyone's like, yeah, like Singleton, it's like he's our best linebacker. It's like, okay, like we just watched Levante David, who's like 30 years old, dominate an entire football game. And that's the problem with the Eagles, is like there's teams that are like they're in cap situations worse or a little better than ours, but they at least have blue chip players. Like people are forced, like hoping our quarterback gets traded right now. That's where the state we're at. So hopefully we avoid some of those Davion Taylor situations in the next couple of months.
When you have the worst linebacking core in the NFL, and you spend a 3rd round pick on a linebacker who plays 3% of the snaps, I'd say you have a draft evaluation problem.
Yep. Or a Howie problem.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. All right. Let's finish this off. My number 1 is talking about the depth at safety here is Andre Cisco from Syracuse. He would have to fall a little bit like Taurus, your guy, Chris. He's like one of those that he could slip into that late 1st round, but if he slips to the 2nd round, this would be a home run pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like Trevor Moehrig, this guy has a ton of speed, and that's what you want out of a top-notch safety prospect. This kid has wheels. He's got excellent closing speed, great lateral quickness. He's got fluid hips that allows him to just change directions in that backfield. He's a legit playmaker. He had 13 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 14 pass defended in 24 games at Syracuse. Like Landon Dickerson, he does come with some injury concerns. So when you're talking about guys that got bit by that injury bug, that's kind of a no deal there when it comes to Eagles fans. But he's young. He's only 20 years old, so he's going to need some coaching. He's a little bit of a project, but this is a safety that has immense upside. I feel like on ESPN, upside. But anyway, Andre Cisco is my number 1 day 2 prospect for the Philadelphia Eagles. Would be an awesome pick in that 2nd round. Any thoughts on that, Chris? And who are some of your honorable mentions?
Cisco, I'm a big fan of. Like we were talking about, there's probably like 6, 7 safeties that you can have in the 2nd and later round. That's like the funny thing, because like no one really talks about any of the safeties going in the 1st, and that's like the same thing with like the running backs. Like these guys aren't really projected 1st round picks, but they're all most likely going to be starters. Like the first like 5 or 6 of them. It just really comes down to how these got the NFL coaches and scouts are valuing the positions and everything, because you need your offensive tackles. Even more so after watching the Super Bowl, every single GM's like, oh my God, like Patrick Mahomes is getting $50 million and he's the best quarterback in the league, and this guy can't even get like a screen. He can't get anything off because he was just getting destroyed just because of 2 injuries to their line. It's absolutely crippled them. Got honorable mentions. There's a bunch of them. Obviously, people are going to be rewatching this video, so I want to give them some homework. Tennessee's Trey Smith, Alabama's Alex Leatherwood, Florida State's Asante Samuel Jr., Ohio State's Tomi Tagai. Is it Tagai? It's weird. He's a D tackle. Cam McGrone, linebacker from Michigan. He's really underrated. Northwestern's Greg Newsome. Oregon State's Hamaclar Rashard Jr., Dillon Radons from North Dakota State, left tackle, Javon Holland, Chaz Surratt, linebacker UNC, Israel Mukamanu from South Carolina, Dwayne Eskridge, he was amazing at the Senior Bowl, the wide receiver. And then one safety we didn't talk about, and I want to get your guys' opinion on him, was Hassam Nasirildeen from Florida State. I mean, he kind of looks exactly like the type of guy that Gannon would take. He's like a lanky, rangy safety. I was just wondering what you guys thought about him. Him and Asante Samuel Jr. were really solid for Florida State. I mean, for some reason, I kind of want to pair guys that played on the same team because, like, I looked at J.C. Horn and then I looked at Israel Mukamanu, and I was like, if you match those two, that'd be solid because one could start next to Slay, then one could learn under Slay, and then you could have that going on, or you could have Asante Samuel Jr., and then you have Nasirildeen behind him. I didn't know if you guys watched any tape on Hamza, but he's really good.
All I know about him is he missed a lot of last season. Does he have injury concerns? What's the deal with that?
It was a non-contact ACL in 2019.
Yep.
And he missed most of 2020 with it, I think, if I'm thinking of the right guy.
I'm telling you, Florida State needs to uproot their field and burn it and then put new sod down because if you really look at it, it's like all their main safeties have gotten hurt there because it was what's his name on the Chargers. Derwin James. He's the most injury-prone guy since he got to Florida State, but he's also one of the best safeties in the league. He just never gets to play a full season. But, yeah, Nasirildeen, he's really good. You guys would like tape on him if you watch it.
Sounds good. Honorable mention, Carlos Basham. I didn't bring him up in my top 5, but
Boogie, yeah.
That's a guy that, I know the Eagles have so much money invested on that defensive line, but you look at Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, there's a lot of aging happening also on that defensive line. Getting a guy like Basham who's super talented, super big, could be a starter moving forward. That's what you need because I still don't know what you got in terms of starters moving forward for those Philadelphia Eagles edge rushers. What about you, Shane?
3 guys for me I want to mention. 2 of them are from UNC, but Michael Carter was the running mate to Javonte Williams. And I talked about him a little bit on our first podcast where we were just talking about some underrated guys. And I think he's got some good pass catching ability. He's going to go later than Williams, but, he could be a 3rd round type of guy that you look at to come in and be more reliable than Boston Scott as a running mate for Miles Sanders. And then Surratt, linebacker, he's another guy I really like. Played quarterback, moved to linebacker, real great football IQ. I think Eagles fans would really like him. And then, because I always fall in love with safeties. We got another safety out of Pitt. Ford, it's not Rudy Ford, but that's what's stuck in my head. What's his first? Paris Ford.
Really good.
Yeah, I really like him. He's real rangy. He played a lot of single high, but if you can play single high, you can play split field, which is what we're going to move to, I think. So I really like him. Not as much as Holland, but, man, I'd love to have either one of those guys on the 2021 Eagles.
Kevo says Quincy Roche. Then he says the U. The guy came from Temple, man. Get that right. He from Temple. Let's go. Shane, finish with plugs, man. You're up, dude.
All right. Well, you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. Follow along the Painted Lines account. Deibs and I are putting out a lot of scouting reports. I've been slacking this week because I've been swamped with work. We're going to get back to it. So also, if you have a Twitch account, I would love it if you would go to twitch.com or twitch.tv/thepaintedlines and give us a follow. We're on the path to Twitch partnership. We're trying to work out some big things there, and we need your help. We've got to hit some follower counts there. So if you don't have one, just go make one. It's free, but we would love for you to go follow us, help get our follow count up there.
Amen. What about you, Chris? Where can we find you, dude?
Real quick, Stan Jones in the comments said, is Jacoby Stevens projected at safety or linebacker for the NFL? LSU fan here, safety. He's looking to play safety. I feel like he could be kind of like a box safety, but, yeah, right now he's working out at safety. But yeah, for me, it's right there in the name. It's my last name at Mally_Chris_24. You can find me on Twitter. I do stuff with 4th and John. I do a bunch of draft stuff. Did a bunch of stuff for the Senior Bowl, and I'll have a ton of stuff going forward until draft.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Chris. For everyone, stay awesome.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh, man, and being just posterized Russell Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia Eagles! Let me get it!